God that they were worshiping, that they were serving. Baal was often represented as a bull. Baal was the god of protection and provision. He was often associated with fertility or fruitful crops. So if you wanted a bigger family or better crops, this is your god. You want a promotion, more wealth, or a better sex life, this is your dude. The one that ensures that your legacy will last and that you are provided for was this god that you bowed down to. And it's not just back then, though. This isn't just the prophets of Baal or the people of Israel. And so we look back at this epic story with some history lesson. Hear this. We are always answering the question, who or what will we worship? That is just as true for us today as it was true for them that day. It is just as true for you today as you drove here, probably in your car, though maybe some of you scootered. Either way, you got here by some pretty modern transportation. You go home to your pretty modern house or a place you live. But hear this, there is no doubt that there is a war being waged inside your own heart and in your own home, just like there was on that mountain in Mount Carmel. The question that we will always be answering, who or what will we worship? And that will either always be God or it will be something else that we have set up as a God. And if you're like me, though, you hear that story and you're like, yo, but that got gross, didn't it? Like they took out like swords and knives and started cutting themselves. We don't do that. Like that's not something we very much get into. Mainstream American Christianity doesn't have that as part of our ritual, does it? Chris Wright says this. He says, all idolatry is radical self-harm. Anytime that we substitute a false savior for the true and living God, it is detrimental not just to ideations in our brain, but our actual lives and the fabric of our relationships. All idolatry is radical self-harm. And boy, do we have idols. We're just going to go through 4. Tim Keller marks these out in his book, Counterfeit Gods. These are really helpful ways to think about things that can very often capture our hearts or our imaginations. The first is comfort or experience. It's a quality of life that says, if I can experience this quality of life, then I will have made it, then I am good. And so that could be pleasure. It could be induced by circumstances or situations or substances. It could be why we're always on Airbnb or always looking to book flights we'll never actually take, or going in debt, taking trips that we shouldn't be taking. Like all these pieces, why does it come? Because I want this quality of comfort. Amazon knows it and they market it to you like a boss. The second, control. That characteristic of life where we want and must be in control, that we are the ones mastering other people's destinies or in control of our own, or we have to manage and manipulate all these different circumstances so they turn out just the way we want them. And when they don't, watch out because we lose our stuff. Or we get super anxious and hold ourselves off because we can't control this world, so maybe I can just control myself. This is often what lies underneath a lot of eating disorders, right? Or it's what lies underneath the way that we choose to parent our kids or different things like this. It's desire ultimately to be in control and to take control of little small parts of the world because everything else seems so out of control. Next, success. Success as marked out by the world, right? The cultural systems in this world that says the higher up, the more promotions you get, the more worthwhile you are. The more you own, the more you are. The more you produce, the better quality actual person you are. The more value you have to society. We look and get obsessed with promotions or obsessed with amassing the stuff to let other people know and to signal that we've made it, right? Or approval. Living and dying for the stamp of approval of other people that we don't even like that much. And if you've been here, you know exactly what this feels like. That ache in your heart that comes when you hear that 2 other friends got together and they didn't invite you, and you're like, do they not like me? Doesn't matter that it was a 2-seater bike. They couldn't fit 3 people. We have that feeling, right? That we wonder. Basically, anything that you would answer this Mad Lib with, if I only had blank, then I'd be good. So you can play this Mad Lib at home on your own time. But it's not cute, it's not funny, right? This is devastating stuff. This is the stuff that wrecks lives, ruins families, trashes our relationships, and leaves us feeling empty. Do you see why idolatry can be radical self-harm? Each of these things keeps us from living out our God-called identity too. It did for Israel and it will for us. If we desperately crave, or maybe let me change that, When we desperately crave the approval of others, we aren't able to serve them because we need them and their approval to serve us. When we are driven by a need to succeed, we will no longer answer the call to love because we have to leverage our relationships. Like you're only as good to me as you put me forward. And so I'll network with the people that can move me socially forward, right? But not the people that had nothing to offer me. This was still true in Jesus' time. You can look at all his parables. They come right at this idea of reciprocity and loving those who can give nothing to you. You'll never be able to do that if you're driven by a need to succeed. When we crave comfort, we will never sacrifice for the good of others. When we are driven by an insatiable need to control, we will almost always manipulate others rather than mercifully being the hands and feet of Jesus to them. Make no mistake, this battle on Mount Carmel and the battle that we are in is one for the hearts. Will we worship God or will we worship something else?